In this video, we're going to talk knives. Primarily, the first knife that you should get, or rather, the first knife upgrade that you should get once you think, hey, I know what I'm doing, I like cooking, I deserve to get myself a toy. And to be honest, I think buying yourself a good knife is going to be one of the most valuable, one of the highest return on investment purchases that you can make when you start your cooking journey. So let's talk knives. Now, this is a fancy Japanese version of a chef's knife called a Guto. I could be pronouncing that correctly, who knows? And this is typically the recommendation for the first knife that an aspiring culinarian should purchase, a chef's knife. It's fairly large. This is a 210 millimeter knife, so fairly big, fairly comfortable. The smaller end of chef's knives, but as far as knives go in general, fairly big. I love it. You can chop large vegetables, large fruits, large whatever. This is a workhorse. This is a workhorse that will get you through so much kitchen prep. It's super, super versatile. You can use it as a slice. You can use it as a lot of different things. Pretty perfect, right? Yes, but do I think that it is the most valuable knife that you could buy? In the past 5 years, this has not been my most used knife, and I'm going to show you what is. So this knife. This knife is much, much smaller, coming in at about 180 millimeters. It really doesn't look like much compared to that big, beautiful knife that I showed you before. However, the versatility in this, the Goldilocks nature of this knife, leads me to believe that it could be the most valuable knife out there for a lot of people. And here's why. So this is referred to as a petty or utility knife. It is quite small, fits very, very easily in most people's hands. And that's another important thing to keep in note. I have relatively small hands. They're not the biggest hands in the world. And I love this small knife. I love the control of it. I love how this feels like an extension of my hand. This knife feels really, really good to use. Now, what makes this so good? So the chef's knife, for example, does an amazing job at cutting up things like watermelons, things like pumpkins, lots of these larger, bigger vegetables, and obviously still smaller vegetables in between. If I have a big bunch of celery, I can cut that down. Large carrots, onion, anything. Chef's knife can pretty much do it all. However, it starts to look a little bit silly when it takes on more delicate tasks. So whether that be cutting cherry tomatoes, peeling and cutting garlic, portioning mushrooms, it kind of struggles. It's okay, it does a fine job, but I find it a bit unwieldy and a bit inaccurate, especially I have a board full of ingredients, having to aim in with a chef's knife. Shouldn't be waving that around in there. Not the most practical of knives. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the paring knife. Very, very good for things like peeling garlic, perhaps cutting cherry tomatoes, cutting garlic, portioning mushrooms, all those little tiny, very specific tasks that I mentioned before. This does a great job. However, going back to the petty, I find this to be the Goldilocks. For any sort of vegetable prep, it does a great job. But also, it does a fabulous job at butchery tasks as well. Something which I would usually use, and we're really getting out all the knives here, one of these guys. So this is a boning knife, has a little bit of flex in it, but because of the size of the blade, it's very good for deboning chickens or any other sort of butchery. This is a deba, does a very good job at breaking down chickens, breaking down fish, much heavier, much different in size. But if you notice, this medium-sized blade is a nice happy medium for these sort of tasks. Not to say that you couldn't use a larger blade, but medium-sized blades do an amazing job at these sort of things. The petty has a beautiful medium-sized blade that does a really great job at filleting fish, boning meat, slicing small portions of meats and fish and that sort of stuff. It really, really does it all. For the majority of my videos, if you guys have been watching in, this is probably the one I use the most, although I have a couple of different variations, but this has been the most reliable. Another advantage that I would say that these smaller knives have is on price. This big, beautiful, fantastic stainless steel Guto was made by a fantastic master blacksmith, but it came in at 500 sterling, which in dollars is like more. This little guy, carbon steel, still exceptional quality, really nice handle, really nice workmanship. This was like 180, 200 pounds. So less than half of this. And this can do a lot more work. Ultimately, however, even if you do take my recommendations, I would always recommend try out different knives and see what works for you. See if you hold a knife like this in your hand and you feel amazing. It feels like an extension of your hand. You feel comfortable chopping things. This makes cooking fun for you. If your knife is making cooking fun for you, then it's a worthwhile purchase. If you find that, hey, I have slightly smaller hands, I like cooking with a little bit more finesse, this feels a little bit more delicate and easier to use. It's also not as heavy. And that could be a big consideration. If you're cooking and prepping for, let's say, an hour with this, it might feel a little tiring. However, maybe something that's a little bit lighter allows you to cook for longer and to enjoy the process more. Now, I shouldn't be going into this in this video, but something to keep in mind, if you are buying a knife, this is a Western handle. I'm going to be showing you some knives with a more, perhaps comfortable for some people. It's right here. This is like the more a Western handle, whereas this is the more sort of like Asian, Japanese style handle. These can be a lot more comfortable to a lot more people because of the grips that are involved. So yeah, always try the knife which you want to buy in person, or try a knife that's similar. For example, try something like this that's maybe not the same brand, but you're like, oh, this has a good weight in my hand. I'm going to look for something that's similar online, and I can really focus in and see what I want to buy. Now, if you're looking to buy anything like this, I don't really have affiliate links because Amazon don't have the best selection of high-end knives, but I have been using Chef's Knives to Go since I started cooking. They're amazing. They actually go through the trouble of delivering to Malta, even though they're an American company. They're not sponsoring this video, but guys, I love your products. If you'd like to give me money, I'll take it. So shout out to Chef Knives to Go. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep in mind that no matter what knife you get, it's only going to be as good as how well that you maintain it and take care of it. So always sharpen your knife, keep it honed, and you'll really enjoy the experience. A sharp knife is a safer knife and is just a much more fun knife to use. If you have any questions about knife recommendations or types of knives that you should be going for, or the next knife that you should be purchasing, I hope to be making a lot more videos about chef's knives and cooking knives because I absolutely love them. If you're still looking for something to do, you could totally watch this video. It would really help out the channel and I'd really appreciate it. If not, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. It's a lot of coffee. It's a lot of coffee.